Hello dear comrades, Eldar with you. Thomas and his friends are a crime family show about talking trains that live on the island of Sodor. We love this show very much. However, in Thomas and his friends there are many creepy and sometimes even scary moments that could make young or even adult viewers scared. So in this video, we will talk about really creepy moments from Thomas and his friends. All Boko mates is true, Sigma Neville, that's me too. And today I will help Eldar to scare you. I got the idea for this video from Sin Duke, and in particular I was inspired by the video about I Will Get You. Well, enough for the introduction, let's go scare. Let's start with something less creepy. Season 4, Episode 1. In this episode, Thomas tells the engines a story about three little engines, Duke, Stuart and Falcon. One day, Stuart and Falcon start laughing at Duke. Duke gets angry and decided to tell these two a story about the engine called Smudger. Smudger was not a careful engine. He did not drive carefully and often derail. Duke asked him to be more careful, but Smudger didn't listen, and at the same point, the railway manager decided to punish him, and this fragment has been remembered for a long time. They turned Smudger into a generator. Now Smudger can't laugh anymore, because now he doomed to the back of the stock at the same building forever, with no way to escape. All he can do is watch the engines go by and generate energy. Well, he's a generator, right? Perhaps many of you thought that I will talk about how Duke was locked in the sheds and how he has there for so long time. But Smudger's story caused me more emotional than the story about Duke. After all, Duke was found and pulled out in the next episode, but Smudger's story is unknown. Season 8, Episode 21. In this episode, the steam engines work on the island of Sodor as if nothing had happened, but that is Halloween. The Fat Controller instructs Thomas and Emily to go to Smelton Yards and pick up scrap metal from there. Percy is afraid for his friends and tells them to beware of ghosts. Thomas and Emily laugh, saying that this is all fiction and prediction. Upon arrival at the destination, it was already dark and it became scary. Emily and Thomas were slowly driving through the yard of the plant. They were noticed by Diesel's Ari and Bert, and they decided to scare the engines. They began to push trucks with metal to scare the engines. Despite the fear, Thomas and Emily arrived for their cargo, but at one point an all-white rock fell on Emily. Because of this, Emily stopped saying anything and she went to Thomas. Thomas saw it was a ghost and started running away, and Ari and Bert started running away. All this let the heroes arrive at Sigma's sheds, where the Fat Controllers called Ari and Bear for their jokes, and made them burn carriages for Thomas and Emily. While the steam engines were taking their cargo, a real ghost appeared as steel mail. Ooh, it's scary. Season 6, Episode 12. On the island of Sodor, Halloween is favorite holiday for all the engines. They especially love to watch the fireworks that the Fat Controller usually prepares. One night, Edward tells the engines about a ghost train that once lost its whistle and now it wandered somewhere around Smelton and is looking for it. After this story, Sir Topham Hatt sends Thomas, Percy and Doug to work in Smeltern. Percy was very impressed by Edward's story, so he was a little scared to work at the factory, and Thomas also teased him, scaring him with a ghost. Doug decided to support Percy and teach Thomas a lesson, At one point, he asked the worker to leave Thomas for extra work, and he and Percy went out of business. When the factory door slammed shut and Thomas was left alone, he stopped laughing. He was very scared. He was riding back when the chase very enveloped his body, and at one point he heard a steam whistle. Of course, everything ended well. But the fact that Thomas was left alone in a factory full of rusty locomotive bodies was very creepy. Season 7, Episode 18. Fergus, the pride of the cement works. One day the Fat Controller sends Diesel to help him. Diesel immediately starts doing things against the rules. Then he tricks Fergus into going to Smelton. Fergus gets there. Darkness, the grating of the metal and cranes. Fergus and his driver became very scared. At one point, Harry and Bird appears. They frighten Fergus even more, and he lives there in fear, hiding from the Diesels. He hid in an abandoned quarry. There, no one be able to find him. Well, except for Thomas. This episode is probably one of the strangest episodes of the season 7. It's quite creepy, but at the same time, nothing supernatural happened in it. However, all this environment, abandoned buildings, metal, broken steam engines, all this is very scary, but the episode itself is quite boring, so we'll not draw in on it longer. Season 4, Episode 15. This episode begins with Rusty wanting to find a new engine for the Bluebell Railway. Having received permission, Rusty sets off to find an engine somewhere between Vickerstown and the main line. It's a dark night. Rusty arrives at the station where only Diesel work. Suddenly, they start to scare him, saying that what he's looking for isn't there. But Rusty decides to go to the siding and find a steam engine there. The little engine, with the high funnel, stood alone in a pile of scrap metal. It couldn't move and didn't know what would happen to him. Only his driver could calm him down. But then Rusty appears. He helped it light the firebox, and the two engines drive off while the Diesel ponder. Brr, creepy crap. This episode is probably one of the scariest Thomas episodes in terms of a visual and music. Scary music, scrap background, this episode turned out to be very scary at the same time very interesting. And by the way, I always wondered how Stepney's driver were there. He didn't have a home and was sitting there, or what? Well, okay, let's move on to another scary episode. Season 5, Episode 18. This episode starts as usual. Oliver is allowed to take the mail train, but at one of the turns Oliver stops and waits for the signal. But the signalman has fallen asleep, so Oliver goes ahead and turns onto the wrong truck. Oliver is driving along an abandoned line. His fireman is complaining that they need to take on water. Suddenly, they reach an old station, and beyond that, the shed. Oliver is terrified. He tries to stop, but it's too late. But then they find him, and then it turns out that Oliver finds an old hotel or something, and the Fat Controller pries him once again. A strange episode, and rather boring, unlike the next episode. Season 5, Episode 14. It has some slightly creepy moments that start during the day, but that doesn't make it any less creepy. It all starts with Toby taking the Fat Controller and his grandchildren on a journey to find an abandoned castle. In the end, they find an old fork in the road, one way towards the castle and the other to the mine. But we are interested in the mine, since the main events of the series will take place here. Old and rusty engines and carriages, described buildings and rails, all this in this mine. Toby became uneasy when they are there. Soon he is sent to watch the mine at night. Thomas warns him that the ghost of an old soldier may dine here. At night, Toby hears a terrible sound, looks like puffing. His driver and fireman bravely go in the description of the sound, but return surprisingly quickly. They tell him that the ghost wants to meet him. Toby is shocked, but decided to check what is there. And it turns out that it's just an old engine Bertram. Wow. By the way, at the one point when the driver Toby asks if the ghost can't wait until the morning, he says that ghosts don't work during the day. Apparently, according to their plan, this scene was supposed to be funny. However it is. Season 4, Episode 19. In this episode, a circus came to Sodor. When time passed and the circus was about to leave, Henry was sent with the workmen towards Henry's tunnel to clean the blockage from the tracks. The workers enter a dark tunnel. They can't see very much. Suddenly, they hear a roar and see a long thing appeared in front of them. The workers run back in panic. Then, Henry decided to push it out of the tunnel himself. But suddenly, this thing started to push Henry back. Everyone is horrified, and then it turns out that it was just an elephant that escaped from the circus, which Henry doused with water. Of course, this episode wasn't meant to be scary, but damn, that moment with an elephant trunk which also moves because of it, every time I rewatched Thomas, I closed my eyes at these scenes because I was afraid to look at this elephant. Season 5, Episode 13. The story begins with Stepney being sent to work in a quarry. After Stepney has completed all the tasks, he goes home. The fog came down. Stepney could hardly see anything. The things were pointing the wrong way, but Stepney did not understand this and went the wrong way. Soon he stopped in an unfamiliar place. His driver decided to wait until the fog cleared. When the fog cleared, Stepney was horrified to find out that they had ended up in the scrap yards. His driver and fireman went for help. Suddenly, the familiar Ari and Bird appears. They grabbed Stepney and dragged him to the smelter. They left him right under a huge claw. Stepney began to scream, but no one heard him. Now he will be destroyed by this machine and turned into scrap, and nothing will help him. It's good that the Fat Controller and the other were nearly, and they managed to turn out the machine. This what means to care for the engine. Season 5, Episode 11. This series may scare the viewers from the very beginning. It all starts with Henry getting ready to drive a train somewhere in the direction of Pilgodred. Then Edward tells Henry that when an owl hoots, a fog falls and a ghost appears. Henry doesn't believe in this nonsense. But then the fog suddenly descends. Henry and his crew notice a yellow signal warning of a danger. They continue on their way and come across a crossing where the gates are closed and the signal is red. Also, there is a singer hanging on the tree. information that the viaduct ahead is in poor condition. But no one warned them about this. But then Henry noticed the signalman's jacket, but he is nowhere to be found. What does this mean? Then they see how the light in the old station building moves from room to room. Henry gets even more scared. A ghost has came for his soul. Then the light disappears also. His driver and fireman decided to go back. Phew! That was a lot of talk, but wait, that's not the all. When Henry was told the viaduct was fixed, he could take the train there again. By nightfall, his mood had improved, but suddenly an old hooded and golden road passed. Henry jumped. The trucks began to laugh at him. Henry told them to be quiet, but he himself was afraid. Soon the fog came down. Henry passed the lamp. Suddenly, something very strange happened. The gates closed by themselves and the red signal came on. Seeing this, even the trucks became scared. They started to pull Henry along with them and broke him through the gates. Meanwhile, some figure was watching Henry. But then Henry saw that the trucks was blocked by a landslide. He started to break down the train, but the trucks fell into the ribbon and Henry remained on the rails. And then this mysterious figure began to approach them, and it turns out it to be a signalman, Old Billy. As it turned out later, he tried to warn them like that, and I have a lot of questions for him, like couldn't he just leave the station and say everything? Why scare them like that? Well, probably we'll never know about this. Season 6, Episode 13. One day, there is a competition for the most beautiful station on the island of Sodor. All the engines are very busy. In the evening, Sir Topham Hatt asked Percy to go to Mayfield Station. Percy will have to get at night. He's scared. His road lay through an abandoned mine. When Percy was driving past, he had to stop at the signal box, and at one moment this happened. The little engine was very scared and drove away. The next day, Percy told Donald and Douglas about what happened, to which he was told that these are gnomes who steal engines' wheels and tear off pipes. Percy was scared by their stories. The Fat Controller again instructed Percy to go to the station at night. This time, when the engine was driving past the mine, a large building collapsed. Percy, starting at this, did not notice the trucks in front of him and crashed into them. The doors of one of them opened and gnomes poured out. Percy was very scared. At the end, Inspector explained to him that the buildings were simply falling into the very shard that was under them. And these are not scary gnomes who do bad things to trains, but ordinary garden gnomes. The series centrally ended on a good note, but watching huge buildings go to the ground in the dark is an eerie sight. Season 5, Episode 24. According to the plot of this episode, life on the narrow gauge railway is full of swing. The engines are transport trucks. At one point, Peter Sam stopped to fill up with water, but his truck broke the old rusty coupling and rolling down to the mine and fell off the bridge. Duncan made fun of Peter Sam for a long time because of this, to with Rusty told a story about an engine that was driving across this bridge at night, lost control and fell into a swamp. According to the legend, the ghost of the engine can still be seen on the bridge. Duncan did not believe in these tales. The driver and farmer decided to teach him a lesson. At one point, he had to pick up the cargo and transport it across this bridge. When Duncan had to go, it was already getting dark and he did not really want to go anywhere. but there was nothing to do. When he was driving across the old bridge, an engine made by fireflies appeared in front of him, and then his driver threw boulders into the water. Duncan got very scared and went back. At the sheds, Duncan closed his eyes. The driver tried to talk to him, but Duncan pretended to be asleep. Then he finally opened his eyes to make sure that he was not alone. Season 2, Episode 24. This could be the scariest Thomas episode ever, but it isn't. Why? Let me explain. According to the plot of the series, Percy tells Thomas and Toby the legend of the ghost train. Thomas does not believe in this nonsense and leave. Later, Percy crashed into a cart with Lime, which was standing on the tracks, because of which he turns white. Then he and Toby decided to scare Thomas, and they scared him very much, so much so that Thomas became afraid of every sound. So you probably noticed that I didn't say anything creepy about this episode. And the funny thing is that it's not the episode itself that's creepy, but the story of its creation and its first showing is creepy. Not long ago, a creepypasta about this series appears on the internet. In it, we were told that when one boy first saw this series, the author of the creepypasta, he said that his old version was different from the final series. It was much scarier than the final show. But it's worth conditions that it's just a creepypasta, and there is no official confirmation of this. And anyway, there's information for a Spectre video. I'm serious. Before I get to the scariest Thomas and Friends episode, let me quickly tell you about a few more creepy Thomas moments. The creepy crane in the fog from season 7 episode 11. Thomas who was covered in flour and scared Diesel in season 9 episode 26. Random monsters from season 16 episode 4. Platforms of fear from season 18 episode 3. Like the ghosts that were in the 2 parts of Diesel's Ghostly Christmas, the devilish dragon from season 3 episode 7, episode 13 of season 17 where James scared Stephanie and Percy so much and then got scared himself. The movie Tale of the Brave, which in scenes was a horror, although perhaps the most terrible thing is this metal monster. And Glow in Dark Henry from season 20 episode 21. How scary that is, you decided just couldn't really include in there. Season 5 episode 25. Rusty and the Boulder. This episode can be considered the creepiest Thomas episode ever, and even though it takes place during the day, it doesn't make it any better. It all starts with us being shown a huge boulder standing on a big mountain. No one touched him for a long time, but then a quarry was opened in that place. Rusty was the most worried about this boulder. He felt like it was watching him, and indeed, the boulder would apparently have a face in Rusty's mind. Then it started raining, and at one point, a piece of rock fell onto the tracks. Rusty decided to go away. In the morning, the rain stops. The new thumper starts working, but at the same point, it starts shaking, and then a boulder falls right in front of Rusty. Rusty panics. Then the boulder rolls after him. Rusty tries to run away and disappear around the bend. But the boulder, as if a magic, appears in front of Rusty. Rusty runs away from it and eventually manages to drive onto a hill, and the boulder rolls past. A huge, uncontrollable ball rushes to destroy everyone it's in path, and nothing can stop it. At some point, the boulder crashed into the shed's building and finally stops. The Fat Controller decided to close the mine and they rolled the boulder to another place. and sometimes Rusty thinks that the boulder looks at the place where it was stood. This episode really stuck in the minds of many Thomas fans, especially because the boulder had a face. Yeah, sure, we are shown that it doesn't actually have a one, but it's still pretty creepy. Fan art and various models and pictures are dedicated to this boulder. It still haunts someone in their dreams. I'm sorry, I always wanted to put a jump scare here. Here, take this, I think you'll need it now. In conclusion, I wanted to say that despite all of the above, I'm not saying that Thomas the Tank Engine is a scary show. Yes, it has scary moments and unpleasant shots, but despite this, it's a wonderful show on which many of us grown up and on which the future generation will grow up too. Episodes from today's video can of course scare you, but the whole series is not built on this. Scary moments are everywhere, and Thomas is a place where moments can be both scary and beautiful. Well, that's all for me. Thanks a lot for inviting me, and for now, have a good mood and all boko. Well, that's all for today. Thank you all for watching and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you all, goodbye, comrades.